I'm sure you're like me, you have always wondered why is our belly fat so hard to get rid of? First, you must know how it came about and what causes it to be there. So stay tuned and I'll explain to you a little bit more. Okay, before we dive deeper, we need to know a couple of basic things first. What is carbohydrate? Yes, I'm sure many of you know what carbohydrates are, but essentially carbohydrate is sugar, which is basically a glucose molecule or can be a fructose molecule. Or table sugar is basically a combination of 50% glucose and 50% fructose. And glucose is the main source of energy that our body uses. It's like petrol for our car. It provides the energy for our car to move. So glucose is the form of energy that our body, our cells uses. So carbohydrates, what are these? Basically, carbohydrates are long chains of glucose molecules, right? Rather than a single glucose molecule, so they are long chains of them, and these are actually digested or converted to glucose in our gut as it moves along our system. Rice, noodles, pastas, potatoes are foods that are high in starch. So important, where else can you find carbs? We already mentioned about rice and stuff like that. Those are the carbs that you easily would identify with. But do you know that vegetables, especially vegetables that are below ground, like carrots, tapioca, potatoes, these are all carb laden. So these are vegetables that also have carbs in them. So they may be in smaller quantities, but things like potatoes, they do have a significant amount of carbohydrates in them. So vegetables that are low in carb are those that are above ground. So the greeny leafy ones, they will have low carbs. So if you want, you can consume those as much as possible. And those are the ones, those natural green vegetables will be the ones that you get your carbs from. One thing to note that carbs can always be found in sources that we may not be aware of. Sources in, sometimes you go to a restaurant when they cook up something like pasta, the pasta sauce, they're hidden carbs because of the sugar and sometimes maybe even of flour which they put inside. So these are ones that are hidden. So like your chili sauce which you maybe use at with your chicken or KFC, something like that, right? So that packet of sauce literally is high in sugar, which is also glucose, which is also another form of carbohydrate. Okay, so how are carbs processed? Basically, sugar or glucose is absorbed through our bloodstream, and this is transported along to the different cells in our body, which then takes them off as energy. So for carbohydrates, they need to be broken down by enzymes, starting with this enzyme called amylase in your saliva. This initiates the whole process of the carbohydrate being broken down into glucose molecules before they can enter into our bloodstream to be transported to the cells in our body. So then how are the carbs used? So once it's absorbed into our bloodstream, it basically provides the energy to our brain, to our muscles, and to the cells or organs or whichever part of the body that needs it. And importantly, the excess glucose is converted into glycogen in our liver or stored as fat. What actually drives this? There's this hormone called insulin. This is the single most important hormone that is created or produced by our body to help us to actually regulate the glucose in our body. So insulin is basically a hormone secreted by our pancreas beta cells to help us to regulate the blood glucose. A lot of people are not aware, but insulin is actually a fat storage hormone. So now, the reason why you tend to get fat around your belly, or why is it that you store, is because this excess glucose is converted or stored as fat by insulin. So again, once you take in something with glucose, your insulin rises up. It controls your blood glucose, but once it finds that there's excess, it stores as much as it can into your liver as glycogen, but the rest will then be stored as fats. So there's this thing called glucagon. It's actually released by our pancreas, but by our pancreas alpha cells to increase our blood glucose if our blood glucose is low. So it acts in the exact opposite manner of insulin. Again, insulin is to control the amount of sugar to keep it low. Glucagon increases the amount of blood sugar. so that we have enough. If not, we won't have enough fuel to function in our body. Okay, so insulin and glucagon. This chart here shows you how it works in our body. So when we start eating, our blood sugar increases. The pancreas then releases insulin into the bloodstream to capture the glucose. This insulin then stimulates the cells in our body as it moves around. It stimulates the cells to take up this glucose to use as energy. The insulin also stimulates glycogen formation in the liver, which we call it glycogenesis, which is basically turning glucose into glycogen. In my previous slide, I mentioned that. So they will try to store it first in the liver as glycogen, and when the liver is full of glycogen, the excess glucose is then stored as fat by a process known as lipogenesis. Glucagon reverses the whole process started by insulin. So basically, these two, insulin and glucagon, work in tandem to regulate our blood glucose level. Insulin keeps us fat. Insulin is an important hormone to help to regulate our blood sugar, but excess insulin stores glucose as fat. So now you probably will understand why is it that we always have this belly and it's so hard to get rid of this fat around the tummy. If you maintain or keep your carbs high, insulin will be produced, and insulin will grab the glucose. They will store it they'll use whatever they can. Whatever can't be used, they will store it into the liver as glycogen, and whatever excess will go to it as fat. So if you continue taking high carbohydrate or high sugar meals or food, your body will always be releasing a lot of insulin, and insulin will always try to regulate your blood sugar and store excess fat. That's how you always keep your belly. I hope this helps.